You know, when people say they're getting sick of seeing superhero movies, these are the kinds of movies they're talking about. Secret Headquarters. That is possibly one of the just lamest titles for a superhero movie I've ever heard in my life. But, let's get into this. This movie was supposed to come out on August 5th in theaters, but I think the folks at Paramount realized it was going to get its ass kicked by Bullet Train, and they decided to just push it back a week and throw it straight on Paramount Plus. Honestly, they should have gone the Batgirl route and just canceled the release, because, okay, I still can't get over that. That is just like one of the funniest things to have happened, because all the people who are defending DC, they're like sending death threats to people who are saying, "Oh, DC's dead. DC is in such a bad spot." All were proven right by the cancellation of a movie that was almost $100 million, and they just scrapped it. This movie definitely wasn't $100 million. Hell, this probably wasn't even... Hell, the only reason this was probably above $10 million is because it has Owen Wilson and Michael Pena. You replace them with two actors nobody's heard of, you probably don't even reach $10 million. But I digress. I'm not here to talk about DC, because DC will have its due date when Black Adam hits theaters, and when Battle of the Super Sons hits DVD, and when Shazam hits theaters. So DC still has plenty of videos coming up within the next few months. So let's get into this movie. I'm already going to tell you right off the bat, it's bad. It's really bad, and that kind of sucks because the trailer didn't look terrible. It looked okay. It looked like the movie was okay. No, this is bad. This is really, really bad. So, let's just start with the acting. The acting's pretty bad. All of it's pretty bad. Oh, other than Owen Wilson, the acting's bad. Like, even Michael Pena, he's such a talented actor and he's a funny dude, but he can't play villain. They tried to make him like the villain in Tom and Jerry, and it was a disaster. Like, he was terrible in that role, and here, it's mostly because he's not intimidating. It's not that I don't know. There's just something about him, he just can't play a villain. I don't know if it's just because I'm so used to seeing him as Luis, but he's not intimidating in the slightest, so he doesn't work as a villain. He always seems like that. He always seems like a guy who's like working with his friend who's like it's like his friend is doing a fan film and he just needs somebody to play the villain, so he's like, "Hey, do you mind playing the villain?" And it's a guy, and he's like a cool dude and everything, so it's like he can't... It's like, okay, if any of you saw Blade Trinity, first of all, I'm sorry. And second, there was that same actor who played Dracula in that movie. He wasn't very intimidating because he just seemed like in real life, he's probably just like a normal, cool dude. He's not intimidating, so I don't buy him as a threat. And Pena doesn't seem like he's much of a threat either. His mercenaries are garbage at what they do. And his motivations are explained briefly. Like, it's basically said that he's like, "Oh, I want to share this technology, because your father kept it for himself, but I want to share the technology with the world." Not only is that ripping off Black Panther, speaking of which, the movie rips off a lot of superhero movies, I'll get to that in a second, but that doesn't explain what he's going to do with it. He's going to share the technology to the world. Does that mean he's going to allow other people to use it? Or does that mean he's just going to expose the technology and take over the world? Well, from what I can tell, it's the latter, and that makes the character very uninteresting. And Walker Scobell, I don't know what it is, because he was good in The Atom Project. He was. And he's just not good here. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he was just given poor direction, or if maybe this was shot before The Atom Project and just got pushed back several times. I don't know. But something went wrong here. That's a good way to describe this movie as a whole. Something was lost in translation, and I can't put my finger on it. And the other kids aren't very good. They're either over the top or under the bottom, although I will say this show casted a better Annabeth than the Percy Jackson TV series, so there's that. Then you have the mercenaries who are... Again, those ones are, they're just they're stormtroopers, and they're treated like Disney stormtroopers. They're idiots, and they have guns and they can't beat a couple of 13, 14-year-olds, however old these kids are supposed to be. Wilson is like like I said, is the only actor who's doing any good here. He's trying, but he's barely in the movie. He has like 10 minutes of screen time, and most of that's at the end. Before the ending, he probably has like 3 minutes. So you got Owen Wilson for your project, and you wasted him. And again, he was the only actor who's doing any good. This movie was written by Christopher L. Yost, and if that name rings a bell, it's because he wrote Thor Ragnarok, one of the best superhero films of all time. He also wrote Thor the Dark World and Max Steel. Now, Thor the Dark World's just kind of okay. I don't hate it as much as other people do, but I'm not going to act like it's a misunderstood gem like some other people do nowadays. People are acting like Thor the Dark World was a misunderstood masterpiece, and it wasn't. It's one of the weaker MCU movies, but it doesn't mean it's terrible. I just think it's kind of meh. And most of the time when I do my MCU, when I like binge some MCU movies before another one comes out, Thor the Dark World will usually not be on the list. Even when Thor Love and Thunder came out, the Dark World was not one of the ones I rewatched beforehand. And he also wrote the Max Steel live-action movie, which a lot of people hated. I really like. Hell, I bought the freaking thing on Blu-ray, so I obviously like it. And I feel like people didn't give that movie enough of a chance, and the simple fact that the movie had such a low budget was probably why it didn't do as well, because it didn't have the budget for huge action sequences like we see today. It only had enough for small skirmishes, and we'll get into a bit of a ripoff here in a bit, which... but again, I'm getting off topic, but Yost is a legitimately good writer. I don't see it here. Like, the script is probably the worst thing in this movie. It has a few funny moments, but they were like half-hearted chuckles out of me. I don't think there was anything that made me laugh hard like out of Thor Ragnarok. Ragnarok made me laugh hard and made me laugh a lot. This movie made me kind of halfway chuckle like 4 or 5 times maybe, and that's it. And that is a crime when you... And I have a feeling that wasn't Yost's fault. Even though he was given a screenplay credit, it seems like he had less to do with the screenplay and more just of the story. He seemed to have written the story more than he wrote the actual screenplay. So I blame the other 2 writers for the shitty screenplay more than I blame Yost. The special effects are terrible. They're not quite Prey level bad, because the effects in that movie were inexcusable. But they're pretty bad. They're pretty artificial. They look pretty they just look pretty shitty. I got my notes over here. The tone is a disjointed mess. You will have scenes of these cartoonish mercenaries bumbling around like idiots in this crappy slapstick comedy with cringeworthy and unnatural dialogue out of all of the characters. Then 5 seconds later, you'll see one of those mercenaries get executed. What? Oh man, it's not just a one-time occurrence. It happens constantly. It's like Shazam. You get this scene of Billy in this adult form screwing around doing a bunch of dumb shit, and then you get the scene where Savannah breaks into his father's company and throws somebody out the window. The tone is an absolute... I don't know who this is made for. That's another thing. Who is this made for? It's way too cartoony for any adult to get into, but at other times it's a little too dark for kids. What happened here? Okay, so I've mentioned a couple times already how this rips off a lot of superhero movies, and it does. The opening scene rips off, I shit you not, Green Lantern, where something falls from space and chooses our hero to be the one that carries... becomes the superhero on Earth. So that rips off Green Lantern. The next scene is Charlie giving like a presentation in his class that reminded me a lot of the opening of 2015 Fantastic Four. Yeah, they're definitely ripping off the best ones here. The suit that the guard has is an Iron Man suit. It's exactly like an Iron Man suit. And even to the point of having the internal face cam that looks exactly like the one Tony Stark has in the MCU. It's not subtle in the slightest. Then the final battle takes place in this school, and it looks very similar to the fight between Max and Miles in Max Steel, which was also written by Christopher Yost. But not only is the fight horribly directed and horribly edited, and the choreography is just kind of lame. It's like, it's such like obvious stunt doubles here. It looks like a bad Power Rangers episode. And again, this is where the shifting dumbass tone comes back into play, because you have these two dudes fighting in these suits, and then they stop to drink out of a water fountain. What the fuck? Ugh. And again, the action is terrible. Not just the final fight, but there's a couple of fights within the headquarters, and they're horribly choreographed using a lot of really bad slow motion. Like, not quite Zack Snyder's Justice League level bad, but it's like so unnecessary in so many scenes. And like I said, there's no character development to be had here. Not a single character evolves or changes or everything. And even if they do, it's like the most basic thing. It's like this much. And so they don't really have... So it doesn't feel like anything was really accomplished here. And one of the worst things in this is they have where the characters end up afterward, like what the characters do after the end of the movie, and that is like one of the stupidest things in cinema. I swear to God, I don't know why, but that irks me so. Like, if you want to do it in like a biography, if it like a biopic or something, like, okay, like that's fine. Like if you're watching a movie about a professional football player, you say how long he was in the NFL, or maybe he's still in the NFL, or what he did afterwards and where all those characters... That's fine, but when your characters are made up, no one cares, especially when these characters don't have that much of a personality other than the most baseline stuff. Like, we have the main kid whose father's never around because he's a superhero and he's kind of a dick. Not the dad. The kid's kind of a dick too, but... And then you have his wormy black sidekick, and then you have the two chicks who are there really for no reason. They don't accomplish much. Like, I guess the blonde chick's supposed to be the Brainiac. Again, a better casted Annabeth than the Percy Jackson TV show, but it only comes into play twice. And then one of these characters is named Burger. Actually, two of them are. And one of them calls himself Big Mac. As in the burger Big Mac. Ha ha ha. Anyway, what was my point? Oh yeah. So, and it's not just that, it's like, it's not consistent of where the characters end up. Some of them take place, like, within the next few years, and then there's one that jumps ahead of someone is possibly working training to join the CIA, but then said this cannot be confirmed, which, that's, like, the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Like, you can't even actually tell us where they are. That's bullshit. So, oh man, this was a lot more rough than... It was more rough to review this than I was watching, because watching it, I was like, you know what, this is just boring, lame, and just not interesting. I did not expect to get angry at this review, but at least it wasn't just a mediocre one that went like a C-, C, or C+. Unfortunately, it was a lot worse. I'm giving this a D+, and honestly, that's being generous. That is being extremely generous, but it's too lame to put any lower. So thank you guys so much for watching. I've got more reviews coming out. I've got a Bullet Train review that I'm working on. I've already seen it, so that should be up maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. It just depends. I've got a lot of other videos I'm working on because I'm heading back to college tomorrow, so I'm pretty much going to be working on videos all night. So I'll see you at Bullet Train. Bye.